And I'll make sure, I'm happy to follow up with a note to her, or somebody from the team can, just to make sure that she knows we need it converted.
Okay. Okay, so
I'm
the other
happy.
thing that can derail us tonight is my bandwidth, either of my little surface here or our internet service. Our internet speed tends to go up and down. So if anyone notices that I'm starting to have digital problems, or if I notice it, one thing we can do is turn off our cameras, and that will greatly reduce the bandwidth of the meeting. So, and also, if I disappear, just hang out and I'll log back in. It'll take a while, but just talk amongst yourselves, and I'll rejoin the meeting. That hasn't happened in quite a while, but and I'm not Wi-Fi. I am coming over copper wire, so that should
Mhm.
all help. But, and if anybody doesn't feel like being on camera, feel free to turn your camera off now. Um, okay, so I'm going to share my screen and get started. Who was just joining? I saw, oh, that was Marie. Marie's just joining. Okay, good. Hello, Marie.
Hello.
All right.
I'm going to be eating something, so I'm going to get rid of the video.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and I will mute folks, so be sure to unmute if you need to interrupt or ask a question or whatever. Okay. All right, so can somebody nod if you can see a document on my screen? Thumbs up. Okay, looks like we're sharing. All right. So we're going to, I'm just going to zip down the document and show you what we're going to do. Oh, hold on. First, I need to find a pointer, or yeah, laser pointer. And Kate, if you know where the laser pointer is. See it yet. Is it in here? Stand by, folks. Does anybody out there remember where the laser pointer is in Zoom? Well, I'll get started and then we'll get a laser pointer later when Kate finishes looking it up. Okay, so we're going to start by reviewing the name selection process that we're going to go through to do these votes and eventually select a name. Then we're going to review the voting method and review the ballot that we'll be using for this method and talk about how we're going to count the votes. So those are the two big pieces of the evening. Okay, so the name selection process, as we've said at many of our meetings, the end goal of this voting process is to select a new name that maximizes the overall satisfaction of the congregation. We've found a voting method that does that. So that's the process we're going through. We have, for all intents and purposes, paused name nominations because we're finalizing the ballot in the next few days. We could still squeak a nomination in the next day or two. But we want to finalize the ballot here in time to get it distributed. Then this upcoming step, of course, is to conduct the first vote. We call that vote 1 on our paperwork, 1 of 2. that this vote is open to MSUS members and friends. In this first vote, we're going to select our final choice for the institution type. We call that the Cs, church, congregation, etc. We're going to pick the denomination identifier, Unitarian Universalist spelled out, or initials and so forth. And we're going to choose a short list of unique names. And that list will be included on the ballot for our second vote to select one of those. After we conduct this first vote, there will be a forum discussion where we'll review the results of the first vote and discuss any issues, for example, how many unique names to include in the final vote based on the outcome of the first vote. Are there any new nominations for unique names based on the first vote, or just that we've thought of since then? Are there any considerations regarding combinations of C's and U's and finalist unique names? There may be proposals for adding a tagline to the name, to put part of the name in a tagline. It's undefined right now how we will decide on these things. It may be a simple majority vote of the people present to make that decision. After that has all been settled, we'll hold vote 2, also open to MSUS members and friends. And as I said above, that's where we will choose the final choice for the unique name. This ballot, depending on the discussion above, might also include items to be voted on, like the tagline or the order of components in the name. And then the final vote of actually 3, but this is the vote for MSUS members only, to decide whether to adopt the new name. This will be Did you find it? Oh, I might not have it then. Okay, stand by. I don't think I have it. Okay, well, we'll carry on without. All right, so this final vote will be carried out according to our bylaws, which means, among other things, there will be a 10 business day notice that this vote is coming. The board has decided that a quorum will be defined by 40% of the membership present for the vote. The new name will be adopted with an affirmative vote of at least 75% of those voting. And this is the same criteria we use to buy or sell a building. Okay, so that's an outline of our voting process. We can pause here for a minute if there are any questions on the voting process. And if not, I'll continue on to the voting method. All right, hearing none. And if questions do come up, we can go back. It's not that formal.
I have a question.
Okay.
Why does it say C's? What does that mean? You know,
Church, congregation.
okay.
We just, for shorthand, it's the C.
Okay.
Also includes fellowship and we'll look at that on the ballot. Remind me, we'll cover that on the ballot.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to use the STAR voting method. It stands for score, then automatic runoff. As some of you may have experienced already from the dessert practice vote, 0 is assigned to all the candidates that the voter disapproves of. This is also the same as leaving the line blank, giving it no score. A 5 is assigned to the voter's single favorite candidate. So there will only be one choice with a 5 by it. However, don't worry too much about that, because if not very many people score more than one thing a 5, it's not going to break the system. It's a recommendation. By having only one 5, then we know the favorite of each voter. That'll be of interest. It won't necessarily affect the outcome in any particular way, but it will be of interest to us, possibly, depending on the list, a list of finalists. So after those two, then the voter assigns a score from 1 to 4 for each of the remaining candidates. And think of this as a star voting system, where more stars is better. So 4 stars is your more preferred candidate. 1 star is your least preferred candidate of those that you are going to score above 0. Multiple candidates can have the same score between 1 and 4. And you'll see on our ballot that we're asking you to score more than one candidate, because if the vast majority of you only score one candidate, then this election will look very much like a one person, one vote election, which is not going to go well with 70 voters and 70 candidates. And at the end of the session tonight, if people have questions about why that is, why do we need a voting system like this, I can explain that, for those who are interested. Okay, so then how do we determine the winners once we have all the votes? And the rest of this session here about voting is going to be repetitive. I'm going to give you the bullet points here, and then we're going to watch 2 videos that overlap each other somewhat, but I didn't want to pick just one because they each emphasize different things as well. So we're going to see these points in bullet form here, and then we'll see it in videos. Okay, so the scores from all of the ballots are totaled for each candidate, and you want to think of that as adding up the stars in a Amazon rating system or something. We're going to add up all the scores for each candidate across all of the ballots. To choose our first semifinalist, for example, for the unique name, the top 2 candidates, the top 2 candidates with the highest number of stars go to a runoff. And in the runoff, each ballot is going to be assigned to the candidate that got more stars on that ballot. So even if a voter only assigns stars to one of the 2 in that runoff, their ballot will go to the one that they assigned stars to. If a ballot has the same number of stars for both of the people in the runoff, then it's a tie ballot and it doesn't go to either one. And then it's easy to select multiple winners by this process, because we'll just repeat the runoff process for the remaining candidates until we have enough semifinalists for the final ballot. Okay, so before taking any questions at this point, we'll watch this first video, and then we'll talk about the advantages of star voting, why we're using it essentially. So, and unmute and let me know if the volume isn't loud enough or too loud, if it's too loud.
How does star voting work? STAR stands for Score Then Automatic Runoff. And that's exactly how it works. Just give your favorite 5 stars, give your least favorite 0, and score the others as you like. With STAR, it's easy to show your preference order and also your level of support for each candidate. It's safe to vote your conscience, and you don't have to worry about voting for the lesser of 2 evils or wasting your vote. Now let's see how the ballots are counted. Here's the first ballot. This voter gave 3 stars to Abby, 4 stars to Ben, 0 stars to Carmen, and 5 stars to DeAndre. Here's the second ballot. Note that this voter gave Abby and DeAndre the same score, which is permitted in star voting. We'll add these stars to the total, and we'll continue adding up the scores until all the ballots are counted. The two highest scoring candidates are finalists. The remaining candidates are out of the running. Now it's time for the second round of tabulation, the automatic runoff. Each ballot counts as one vote for the finalist each voter preferred. Let's see how many people preferred Carmen over DeAndre and vice versa. This voter preferred DeAndre to Carmen, so this vote goes to DeAndre. This voter also preferred DeAndre to Carmen. Note that their favorite candidate was Abby, but she didn't make it to the runoff round. Even though this voter's favorite couldn't win, their vote still makes a difference, and goes to the finalist they preferred, DeAndre. This voter gave both DeAndre and Carmen 5 stars, indicating that they like both equally. Since this voter would be equally happy with either, this ballot is counted as a vote of no preference. This voter preferred Carmen to DeAndre, so this vote goes to Carmen. And the last voter preferred DeAndre to Carmen, so this vote goes to DeAndre. Regardless of the scores given, each ballot ultimately counts as one vote. DeAndre wins. DeAndre was in the top 2 highest scoring candidates, and he had the greatest number of voters prefer him over Carmen. Star voting measured how strongly voters liked DeAndre, and also how many voters supported him. So to recap, STAR stands for Score, Then Automatic Runoff, and that's exactly how it works. Voters fill out the ballot on a 0 to 5 star scale. The 2 candidates with the most stars advance to the automatic runoff. The candidate preferred by the most voters wins. Now that you know how it works, want to try out star voting for yourself? Create your own star voting polls at star.vote. And to learn more, donate, or volunteer, go to starvoting.us.
Okay, anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah, it seemed like in one case they had 2 5s. Is that going to be, is there going to be a construct that doesn't allow that to happen? I know I can do something like that with SurveyMonkey.
No, it's not the end of the world if somebody forgets and
Byron,
scores.
your voice has become kind of like a robot.
Okay.
You sound hoarse. I don't know if that's the cold.
No, it's probably bandwidth. So I'm going to turn my
Okay.
camera. I'm going to turn my camera off.
Should we have other people turn their cameras off?
Yeah, if you can, turn your camera off. It'll help our bandwidth.
You sound like you really got to clear your throat.
No, it's fine on my end. I'll just make sure my mic is close. Am I intelligible?
You're intelligible. You just sound like you need to clear your throat.
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounds the same as before people turned off their picture.
Interesting. Okay, well, let me know if it gets to the point where we can't go forward. I'll close this video application in case
Yes, if that helps.
that's having some effect, but all right. So all right. So the next video is going to cover some of the reasons voting. Star voting, incidentally, is currently the best known voting system for candidates. It's far better, which actually, sadly, isn't that much better than one person. And just as an aside, Eugene, Oregon is going through the political battle to try to get star voting used in their city and county. So they'll be the first municipality using it if they win. One of the big advantages is that Centrist candidates are not squeezed out by extreme candidates like they are in our current voting system and even in ranked choice. There is no need for strategic voting to prevent an extreme candidate. You can always vote your conscience. Your true support for each candidate. The end.
Now you
Go ahead.
are breaking up so badly that we're having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, for
I don't know.
about
Mm.
5 seconds, we couldn't hear anything at all.
Oh boy. Let's see.
Would it help if Sam turned off his, maybe?
It doesn't sound like it made that
Makes
big a
no
difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay. I will, I can change out this mouse in case it's interfering.
It's so weird because you really did go from fully normally audible to,
Yeah, one question I have is, did it happen going from before to after playing that video?
yeah.
Okay, so that could be a,
Do you want to play the next video and at least get that part done, or is that not helpful?
and one thing I can do is we can try that, and then I can leave and come back in meeting. I'll make somebody else the host, and I'll leave and come back, and it will probably reset Zoom.
Okay.
I'm just gonna see. That mouse has sometimes caused problems. I don't suppose. Is there any difference now? Is it the same?
About the same.
Okay,
it sounds a little better, but not a lot.
okay. Darn. Well, all right, let's, so we've covered that pretty well. So we'll play this next video. Did the video sound come across okay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll play this next video then, and then I might have to rejoin the meeting. See. Where's that? I'm already sharing. Should I stop sharing and try it differently? I'll try that after this video. Yeah.
It's fatally flawed step 3. We need star voting. The first installment of this series revealed how our seemingly innocuous voting system is an epic nightmare for the people. The second part should have restored a glimmer of hope for mankind, and now we're in the thick of it. Getting star voting passed is going to be no easy task, but knowing that we're aimed true and that this reform will lay the foundation for real change is the key. Star voting is an innovative new voting system that was born out of the debate between approval, ranked choice, and score voting. A few years back, Equal Vote hosted an election reform conference and invited the who's who of voting reform to attend. It turns out that each side of the debate held one piece of the puzzle, and until we combined forces, we were never going to have the voting system that unlocked the potential for real democracy. On one side of the debate were the people who want a system like ranked choice, where voters rank candidates in order. On the other side were the people who said that we need an approval type ballot, where votes can simply be added up using basic addition. Both sides recognized some merit in the other's approach, but thought the other aspects were deal breakers. It was only later that night, over beers with Clay from the Center for Election Science, that inspiration struck. A score ballot can show what order a voter would have ranked the candidates in and who they approve of. Bingo. All the information is already there, and all we have to do is use it. We can count the same ballot with the same information in 2 different ways and get a result that's more accurate than either alone. The star ballot does just that. It uses the familiar 5-star rating system that we're used to from Amazon and Yelp, and then it counts those votes in a 2-step process. First, voters give each candidate a score from 0 up to 5 stars. The 2 highest scoring candidates are finalists. Your ballot already shows which finalist you would have ranked higher, and so in the second round, the finalist that was preferred by more voters wins. In star voting, the first round measures quality of support. Giving each candidate a 5-star rating lets people safely and honestly show how much or how little they support each and every candidate. If you don't prefer one over another, you can give them the same score. If you don't like someone or you just don't care, you can leave them blank. The second round measures quantity of supporters. Star voting's runoff round makes it so that every vote makes a difference, no matter who the frontrunners are. Take it from the pros. When star voting first hit the scene, activists were intrigued, but until we got the results back from Jameson Quinn's cutting-edge election simulator, the voting reform movement didn't realize what it had on its hands. Quinn, vice chair of the Center for Election Science and PhD candidate in statistics at Harvard University, has been working on developing a mathematical method to determine how accurate various voting systems really are. The fruit of his labor is a system called voter satisfaction efficiency. VSE measures election accuracy under a variety of situations in simulated elections. A voting system should ideally pick the candidate with the most overall support, while encouraging honest voting and discouraging tactical voting. In these simulations, star voting came in first place, with 98% accuracy when voters are honest. The simulations also showed that honesty is the best strategy for individual voters and for the electorate as a whole. Even if voters get lazy and most only give 5s or 0s, star voting is still more accurate and inclusive than ranked choice voting or approval voting. Star voting is undeniably a top-shelf election method and arguably the best out of all the ones I tested, says Quinn. It's interesting to note that ranked choice voting didn't even make it into the top 10. So here's a recap. Star voting uses a 5-star rating style ballot similar to online rating tools that people already use, like Amazon and Yelp. Star voting solves the wasted vote problem so that every vote makes a difference and voters have a real incentive to vote. Honesty is the best policy, and it's best to vote your conscience. Star voting is still accurate with any number of candidates or political parties. Star voting prevents election failures by using a fully expressive ballot, taking into account all the information from every ballot, and encouraging honest voting. Every voter has equal voting power, and the system doesn't give anyone an unfair advantage. One point that we didn't mention, but that you might be wondering about, is that there are multi-winner and proportional representation versions of star voting. If you'd like to get involved and help, we'd love to have you. You can help with field testing by using our online election calculator to host your own elections for events and organizations that you are involved with. Learn more, stay involved and up to date by checking out our website, equal.vote, and Facebook groups. Volunteer. Help get the word out by hosting or attending a party, giving a presentation, passing out information, or collecting signatures for our ballot measures in Multnomah and Lane County. Start a local Equal Vote chapter to help build momentum for a ballot measure in your area.
I guess first of all, how is my sound? Still as bad?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
I'm just gonna cycle through sharing. All right, how is it now? Same?
Same.
Okay, so. Yeah. Sense? Laura, were you able to hear that?
yeah, yes, you're a little clear, but it's still really scratchy.
Okay, so I'm gonna make Rev Laura host and then I'm gonna leave and come back in.
Okay. I'm gonna sign.
Okay, how do I sound now?
Much better.
Good.
Yay! All right,
And I made you a co-host.
good. Okay. Learn something every day, but it doesn't help because Zoom will change anyway. Okay, so we've covered these concepts. Can you all see my screen again?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So here's our ballot plan. All the voting, as we've said, will be conducted on paper ballots. And we'll distribute those and return those in any number of ways. One is in person in Sunday services, or by friends who attend services who can bring you a ballot or bring your ballot back. By email. So we will email out to everyone we have an address for a PDF of the ballot to be printed out and filled out. And then if you have a scanner on your home printer, you can scan it and return it by email. You can also use your cell phone to take a photograph of your ballot pages and email those back to us. You can return the ballot in person, or you can return it by US mail. We can also send it by US mail in both directions if we need to. Please let us know by the 28th of this month if you need a paper ballot sent by US mail. Each page of the ballot will carry the voter's name, so we know who has voted, and so we know whom to contact if we need to return the ballot for if we need to contact you for healing. There's some issue with the ballot. Okay, so our ballot design, it's not proposed anymore actually, because it's what we're going to do. The first ballot will have the institution type, the denomination identifier, and the unique names in 3 separate sections on the ballot. And we'll review the ballot next so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so we're trying hard to keep the ballot to 2 pages, so that limits some of our latitude in how we do this. Before I go into the voting instructions, I'll show here the 3 sections. So the first section is on the Cs, we call it, the community, congregation, church choices. The second section here is on the Us. Those are both on the front page. Then we have a little reminder here to see section 3 on the other page. And so this page here is all section 3 with the unique names. And much like the dessert ballot, only bigger, we have a table of 3 columns with currently 70 unique names on it and a couple of places for write-ins. You can also write them in the margin too if you want. And a blank, just like on the practice ballot, a blank beside each candidate for you to put your numbers on. And so while we're looking at this table, it's a good time for me to make the point that our suggestion that you first identify all the candidates that are unacceptable to you and put a 0 on the line by those is mostly for your benefit. The idea is with so many names, if you put a 0 on the ones that you know are just unacceptable to you, it will help visually narrow down your workload to the ones that you want to mull over in more detail. But you can do that really in any way that is comfortable for you. If it works better for you to just put a line through the ones that you know you're not going to vote for, do that. That's fine too. We'll be able to interpret that just fine. We will only need to tally and work with the lines that have a non-zero number on them. Okay, so with that comment, and I guess while we're zoomed out here, if anyone has any comments or questions at this altitude, we can take those, and then I'll go in and go through the instructions in more detail. Okay, so please put your name on all the pages so we can make sure we got both pages and whose they are, in case we need to get back to you. This paragraph up here contains the guidelines we want you to use for the whole thing, but not in detail. So write your name on each page, score each candidate on a scale of 0 to 5, where 5 is your most preferred, as in a 5-star system, just like in the videos. Write the number on the line next to each candidate, and please read all 6 steps before you begin. So again, the guidance is, in the first step, find all of the ones that are unacceptable to you. However, with a caveat, we do ask that in sections 1 and 2, for the U's and the C's, please try to identify at least 3 acceptable candidates to score. And that is to, as we heard in the videos, that's to take advantage of the benefits of star voting. Then identify your single favorite candidate and write a 5 on the line by that candidate. Score all the remaining with numbers 1 through 4, and as best you can, choose a number that's proportional to your preference. So 4 is more preferred, 1 is less preferred, and to some extent divide up the ones in between according to your preference. Multiple candidates can be assigned the same score, with the exception of 5. Oh, darn it. With the exception of 5, which is reserved for your favorite. A blank line is the same as a 0. And if you need to change a vote, just draw an X on the old number and write the new number somewhere in the same box, somewhere nearby. Don't worry too much. If we can't figure it out, we'll contact you. And feel free to work with a pencil and then ink in your final choices if that works for you. Or you can leave the whole thing in pencil. We'll be making a photocopy of all the ballots, so we'll have a traceable record. Okay, so section 1 contains the choices that we've discussed for what kind of institution. Likewise, section 2 contains the choices that we've discussed for our denomination identifier. There shouldn't be anything too surprising there. So in section 3, we're asking that you try to identify at least 5 acceptable candidates to score, as described above. And we have a reminder here, based on feedback from some folks. Remember that higher score, it goes to more preferred. And then here is the current list of unique names. Before I go back to the other set of notes, are there any questions on the ballot? Or at this point, comments for how we can make this ballot better, and preferably still keep it on 2 pages. Okay, well, interrupt if we need to come back. That's not a problem. We can come back to the ballot at any time.
Byron,
Yeah.
I have a comment. I'm not really aware of the problems in balloting and voting. Do we need to tell people a little bit about the background of this. I don't know why. I don't take a big interest in that, but this tells me that I should. Or is that superfluous?
No, no, that's valuable to do. And what I propose is I'll get to the end of, I just have a little bit more to cover on how we're going to count the ballots. And then anyone who is interested in hearing about the answer to your question, I can explain that, and we can let other folks go who are not particularly interested in voting methods. But over the last year, I've taken a very deep dive into voting technology, so I can, or not technology, but voting theory, so I can help answer your questions, definitely.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yep, okay, I can
But
do that.
given what I have said about my experience, is this going to turn people off from even participating? That's what I'm a little bit concerning.
Yeah, that's been a question all along, and that's part of the reason for the practice dessert ballot. And based on the response to the practice ballot, I would say no, it's not turning people off. We've had a good response in terms of the number of people who have actually done it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I just have a little bit more to share on how we're going to do this, how we're going to count the ballot. So when all the ballots have been returned, let me highlight this first point so you know where we are. So when all of the ballots have been returned, each ballot is going to be assigned a number for future identification. So we won't carry the names forward beyond the process of stacking up all the ballots and giving them numbers. We'll have two teams working in Microsoft Excel. They'll work independently from each other, and they will transfer the scores from the ballots into Excel spreadsheets that I'll prepare here shortly. We're totaling up the votes and running the individual runoffs for as many candidates as it makes sense to do. So as I said, those spreadsheets will contain only the ballot numbers, not the voter names at that point. And then when both teams have completed the counting, we'll compare the spreadsheets to make sure that the data entry agrees. So we know we don't have any errors in entering the data, and the logic of we'll check that as well. So that's the end of my prepared comments. So I propose a Q&A session, and then for those who are interested, I can explain why this voting method over other voting methods and how we know what we know about it. And there really isn't any time limit in particular. We don't need to be done at 8 o'clock, for example. I can stay later.
So are you want questions right now?
Yeah, anyone who has questions about any aspect of it.
Just one comment about the instructions, some feedback from the dessert ballot. And I find, at least for me, the format of the instructions were such that it confused me. But I find that one of the things I suggested was to break off even the first instructions, the most simple things, one at a time. Simple sentences that are bulleted. When they're all scrambled together, there's a comparison between one large paragraph and then several steps after it. In my mind, it only confused in trying to understand it.
So you're referring to the paragraph I currently have highlighted?
Just a minute, I'll have to get to the, okay. Yes,
Okay,
anyway, in my mind, it simplifies things. It might take up too much space. I don't know. That's just my reaction to the document.
okay. So we'll see what we can do with what we have on this page to clarify that first paragraph.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to hear that, Sam, because I think we need to, do whatever we can to make this as positive an experience for folks. So I'm glad you spoke up. Byron, I was thinking, I mean, we could even have a table in the back of the sanctuary, and if people want to bring their ballots and be talked through the process, like we could have a voting table where they don't have to feel like they have to read all the instructions per se.
Right. Yep.
And I have a comment on the formation of the ballot. If you spread things out and make that bottom the end of the ballot less white space,
Like
Just-
make the margin smaller, yeah.
make the margins smaller on the bottom so that things can be spread out more on top.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Byron, I just want to say thanks for doing. I think it's helpful to hear it talked through. And I don't know if your other session was gurgled. We can decide whether that's the better one to post, and we can kind of move from there. But I think it's really helpful. So thank you for taking the time.
Sure. Yeah, I think this session is even with the tech issues, I think this session is the better one. Okay. Any other questions or feedback on the content of the instructions? Or questions on details of how the ballot exchange might go, can go, could go, should go? And if not, I can explain a bit about the voting methods for those who are interested.
And others can just log off.
Yeah, no offense taken if you're not interested. I totally get it.
Okay, thanks, Byron.
You're
I
very
get
welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Byron.
Okay.
Thanks, Byron. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Oh yeah. Oops. She's already gone. Do I need to reclaim? I'm still sharing, so I think I'm okay. How do I check my status though? Whether
Yeah,
I'm
and we can hear you just fine, or I can.
okay. Okay, hold on. I just want to make sure. Yep, okay, good. Okay. So okay, so the best way I can start is to illustrate what would happen if we did one person, one vote. So I'll describe the extreme first. So imagine that we have 70 voters, and every one of those voters nominated a unique name, and that most of those voters voted for their own nomination, except for maybe 2 or 3 who liked somebody else's nomination better. In that situation, the winning name would win by only 2 or 3 votes. Literally out of 70, literally minimizing the satisfaction of the congregation, the overall satisfaction of the congregation. So we need to do the exact opposite of that model. Our first thought, because it was the only other voting system we knew about at the time, was ranked choice voting. So I just had heard about it. I thought it was a good voting method. Seemed like the one to use. So I started doing some research on ranked choice voting, and the very first thing I found was information about why ranked choice voting is very little better than one person, one vote. And I can explain later how we know that. Another voting method that I immediately encountered that is well known to be better than ranked choice is called approval voting. And that's where, given a ballot like this table of 70 names, the voter just goes down the list and puts a check mark by each candidate that they approve of. And that's the only information that they have to put on the ballot. And then those just get totaled. So each voter contributes 1 point, essentially, for each candidate that they approve of. And then you just add them up and you have a lineup of the candidates, best to worst. The only problem with approval voting, and I'll go back to using an example of our congregation, is consider our 70 voters. Imagine that 8 or 9 of those voters are in some kind of a clique, and they all like one candidate, and so they all agree that they're all going to give that candidate 5 stars. But the rest of the congregation, the other, how many are left? 62, are not at all fond of that candidate, so they don't give that candidate any stars. If you stopped there, if that's all you did, a relatively unpopular candidate would win that election. Approval voting isn't quite that bad, as I just described, because you can't give a candidate 5 stars. But it goes partway to explaining one of the deficiencies of approval voting, which is that a minority can determine the winner in approval voting. So as they described in that video, the advantage of star voting that takes it beyond the other methods is the runoff at the end prevents that distortion of a minority of voters giving 5 stars to a single candidate by prior agreement, because it allows each ballot to potentially determine who among the top 2 star winners becomes the ultimate winner, because they have to not only get the most stars, but they have to win that runoff vote. So that's an explanation of what is observed in these voting methods. Now, if there's interest, and I'm fine if there's not, I can explain how this was learned mathematically. How they did this via simulation without having to try it in many elections to find this out. But I'll stop there and see if that answers the question. or if there's interest in more.
Are you interested in more, Sam? Just,
I'm mulling this over, it's sort of rather interested. I'm trying to compare it to what I think of as an election. An election, of course, we have this factor of what Byron mentioned, that is a group of people getting together and deciding we're going to give all of our five stars to this particular candidate. That's what the party system is doing. They are parties that get together that say, okay, we're going to put our preference, and of course, and I may not making a very good comparison, because the, say, like state or national election is not what we're talking. It's not a star system, but you do have that factor of people caucusing and deciding that okay, we're going to put our support, and we're going to these are going to put our votes into this. And I can see what you're saying. The star system is able to use the fact that you have different factions supporting different choices. The star system makes it so that those that didn't have all five still have some value, because they're going to say, like, put 4.4, they're going to put their stars someplace up to a final decision between two choices. So I believe, it appears to me that this is a better way, but we certainly don't do that in political elections. State, federal, whatever.
Right, and if we did, and this is the argument, you can go on YouTube and listen to the arguments made by people in Eugene who are advocating at city council meetings for star voting.
Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah. So
Okay.
using a method like this changes, not it doesn't just change things at the ballot box, it changes them at the start of the campaign, because candidates have to campaign differently, knowing that they're competing on this basis. So those who choose to operate at the far extremes will know that they're at a disadvantage by doing that. So it tends to civilize the campaign, and it tends to moderate the positions that are likely to win. So it has those two benefits early on. And this all only makes sense when there's more than two candidates. If there are only two candidates, then this is just the same as one person, one vote.
I see.
So it's really important in primary elections in the United States, and it's really important in state or county or city council systems where multiple candidates will be elected for a given ward. So that's where it's more valuable than in our general elections here in the US. So where we need this is in the primaries, because right now our primaries are completely dominated by extremes. Yep. So yeah, I guess I don't have anything to add to that. The other thing I can contribute without going into detail is the guy Quinn, Jameson Quinn, that was mentioned in that video at Harvard, the Harvard statistician. I watched his videos about how he modeled these various voting systems, and the statistical numerical computer model that he's using to simulate these voting systems is exactly the same analysis type that we use at Medtronic to study things like how many of this medical device can we expect to break in our expected implant population, based on all the distributions we know. And that analysis type has an interesting name. It's called Monte Carlo analysis, where we feed all the individual distributions into a big sampling engine that samples at random from those distributions and builds a master distribution, which is the answer. And that's exactly what Jameson Quinn did to model all these election systems. He just ran tens of thousands of elections of all different random distributions of party extremes or candidate extremes and moderate. So it was really easy for me to understand his videos and what he was talking about because we use the same technique at Medtronic. So I say all that just to say that's why I am comfortable with the conclusions that I see in the propaganda for these voting methods, because I understand the work that it's all based on. And everybody working on getting a better voting system is referring to that Harvard work. So
is my mic still on here?
yes, we can hear you fine. Yep.
In a way that's kind of fascinating. And as you have said, the convincing of doing this might be a very difficult thing to do because it's a complication in people's minds to think about these things, these statistical things and the things that you've been explaining, and say, well, but we've always done it this way. That's why we have so many people are thinking about affecting politics, and they have that set of mind. We've always done it this way, and we cannot change that.
Right.
I think it's possible that this could become a method of voting, but it would not come easy. I don't think it would come easy, but what do I know?
Well, you're right. That is what's happening. It's not coming easy because the current two-party system has a certain group of a certain collection of interests in power.
Right.
And the obvious, I mean, they've studied this stuff. They're political science majors too. They understand all this and they understand the threat to their power. So they oppose these voting systems. And you can see that in the comments on YouTube of all the citizens who are coming out speaking in favor of star voting in Eugene. You can tell that they're opposing the comments, the detractors from the current power system. You can see, you can hear that in their comments. So none of the people currently in power want this voting system.
Yeah.
So it has to be taken by, and I think what the folks in Eugene are fighting for is to get this referendum on the ballot so that the public can vote on using this voting system. It gets kind of meta, but it's really interesting.
Wow.
So it isn't going to come easy because currently powerful people have to lose their power. And then they have to compete on a much more level playing field with other candidates to hold on to that power. For us, it just makes sense because we have as many candidates as we have voters. So we have to use it for a completely different reason.
I see. Well, that's really interesting. I'm very glad we have this session.
Good.
Do you think that, Sam, do you think that this would be, never mind, I would really like people to hear this, what you have just said, what this whole tonight's thing was. And because if you don't know, like you said, you weren't interested at first and now you are, and I think people will probably be a little bit sorry they didn't see it sooner. So I think at this point now, it's like everybody see this video if you didn't come to one in person. That's just my thought.
Agree.
Sure, that's fine with me.
Okay.
All right, should we call it a wrap?
We should. Could Janice and you and I, just for a second talk?
Oh, yeah, we can talk for as long as you like. I'm just gonna stop recording.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
First, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. And Sam, we're the committee, the task force, so that's why I just want to talk with them. So, oh, he's gone.